Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karin Anderson-Abril here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliot Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth
to help us thrive in love and life. I am so pleased to welcome Liz James to the program to talk about something that blew my mind. Many of you know I was recently in Austin for the Children's Health Defense Conference, and one of the best parts of the conference is to walk around and see the vendors because there are so many like-minded people trying to share truth, especially in domains that we don't even think we have to worry about. When it comes to something as very seemingly benign and something so typical as blood donation, and you go to the hospital for surgery and there's going to be some donated blood that you're going to use should you need it. We don't really question that. At least I didn't until I met Liz. So Liz, take it from there.
Thank you for having me today. Really, really excited to be here and to share with your listeners. I should probably give just a tiny bit of background for myself too. Because blood was never really on my radar either. I mean, receiving a blood transfusion was not something that I had ever thought about as well, until 2020. And I was a pharmacist. I still am a licensed pharmacist, but in September of 2020, I left as a practicing pharmacist because I wouldn't give the shot to anybody. Literally on September 9th of 2020, the Lord made it very plainly clear that was it for that piece of story of my life. And at that time, I thought, okay, there's a whole spiritual side to that.
Right. Which we would love to hear, because I'm just to interrupt quickly, being a pharmacist, I, as a person not in the medical field, would think you'd be very comfortable, and they called it a vaccine. So I'm surprised that you were thinking, oh, that's a hard no for me. In fact, I'm willing to step away from my entire career because of this. So how did you come to that conclusion after being someone who, I mean, if you're a pharmacist, you probably were pretty comfortable with the flu shot, or maybe you took it or didn't, but some of these other vaccines probably didn't sound the alarm for you.
Yeah. So, and that's a really good question. You know, I'm approaching my 35th year in pharmacy now. But 10 years into my practice of pharmacy, I had my own health experience, and that which woke me up to the truth about a lot of things: food, pharma, lots of things. And when that happened, it was like peeling back the layers of the onion for me. And as I'm sure probably is the same with you too, is like once your bubble has been burst in one circle of your life or one aspect of your life, then you're like, okay, what else is not exactly true, right? And it takes a lot of humility, I'll say, because when you come out of a degree program where you're basically brainwashed because you're told you have to be confident in what you say, you have to, you've got to do these things, there's no wiggle room for it, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what if that's not true? Then what?
Right.
So by the time the COVID vaccine had rolled around, I was already opposed to vaccinations in general.
Okay.
And I had already done like so much research on pharmaceuticals and all kinds of other products. So I knew, like, I was already digging very deeply. As soon as they said that the shot was going to be released very quickly, I was like, all right, that's a red flag, all of the things. And when they said it was mRNA, I was like, no, that's a hard no. And the problem though was, my husband and I mean, obviously this is an income, it's a 6-figure income. And what do we do about that?
Right.
And literally, I was really wrestling with that. I was like, am I going to go for a religious exemption? How am I going to not just not take it, but not perform my duties in the pharmacy? And, I'd found other ways to navigate the other vaccinations. If I needed to, if I felt like it was the right thing to do, which often it was, I would simply ask somebody. I was like, have you really examined vaccinations, this particular vaccination, or are you just coming here because somebody told you to come here to take the shot? And that is my job as a pharmacist, is to give informed consent. I mean, that's what we are told to do. my idea of informed consent might be a little bit different than most pharmacists, I'll say that, but mine would be referring them to websites and books and things. It's like, I think it's a good idea for you to understand the pros and cons both ways. And then after you've done your research, if this is what you still choose to do, then please come back, that kind of thing. But on September 9th of 2020, I was driving home from work, and literally the Lord said, like out of the blue, I was really thinking about it, like, what was I going to do? And on September 9th, the Lord just said, he said, you're out. I mean, it was like he said those words. And I knew what it meant. I had about another 20-minute drive home to kind of think about it. I got home. I was like, okay, how am I going to talk to my husband about this? And all I said to him was, I said, I'm getting really uncomfortable about what's about to be asked of me at work. And he was quiet for a few minutes, and then he said, well, you need to quit and we'll figure it out. And that's not typical for us. I mean, typically would be, well, let's sit down and figure the budget out, figure out where we can cut corners and make this happen, that kind of thing. And so that was on a Tuesday. By Friday, I had turned in my resignation, and then I was technically unemployed after that.
Were you at a hospital pharmacy, or were you at a CVS, Walgreens kind of thing?
I was in a retail pharmacy at that time.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, and because they were gonna be one of the main places where people were gonna be
Right.
rolling up their
Right.
sleeves.
Yeah, right. And interestingly, I mean, the Lord prepares people all the way through their life for the moment that he taps them on the shoulder and says, it's your turn. And I see this more and more, the
Mm-hmm.
more the more places I go where I hear other people have also been tapped on the shoulder. And it's like, I jokingly say, it's like God has his sleeper cells too.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to think of sleeper cells as terrorists, but we also have the purveyors of light, right? And truth. And the question is, when God taps you on the shoulder and you know it, or what do you do with that? So at that time, I thought that it was just like I was just to be done. I was not to be involved in it. And so I stepped back and I was like, okay, I'm just going to start a coaching business, which I was kind of doing behind the scenes anyway. And I'm just going to teach people how to live outside a big pharma lifestyle, or pharmacy Babylon. That's what I was going to do for a living, lab work and that kind of thing. And so I dove into that. And then in January of 21, so like 5 months later, I was being very quiet during my quiet time. And he said, if you have no country, you'll have no business. And I was just like, okay, what does that mean? I mean, I knew what it meant, but what did that mean in terms of what is my responsibility then? And so I like just contemplated it for a while, and then I took a constitution class, and because I was like, okay, well, it's been a while since it's probably eighth
Right.
grade since I had a constitution update. And so I took a constitution class, and then I ended up taking a biblical citizenship class, and then I ended up teaching several semesters of biblical citizenship. And all of this plays into the story of blood, believe it or not. And it was just because the Lord was like, he was like, I've tapped you. Now I'm going to equip you for what I'm going to ask you to do here in a little bit. Only I didn't know that. I just thought he was telling me to look after my own business at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I ended up becoming a precinct chair and getting involved politically too, because that was something that just kind of evolved through teaching. Well, then in May of 21, so we're 9 months after I quit, in May, during my quiet time, he said very clearly, out of the blue, like I wasn't even thinking about it. He said, I need for you to preserve the blood. And I said, I know what that means, and I'm here for the person that's going to do it. So I spent from May to September of 21 just looking for the person that was going to do this. I mean, I was like, because I knew for sure it was not me. I, I don't have any background in blood. That's not my thing.
Right.
I'm a researcher, but but blood is not my specialty. I mean, I mean, I know a little bit more than the average person just through pharmacy,
Mm-hmm.
but not enough to be qualified to do what I was going to do. or what he was asking me to do. And so I'm like actively looking for the person that was going to do this for the summer months of 21. And in September of 21, so almost a year to the day, um, he and I are having this conversation, and I said, "Why is nobody doing this?" And he said, "Because you're not." I mean, like, he did it so fast back, and and it, like, literally brought me to my knees almost, because it was like it was a reprimand, you know? And I was like, I don't know." I said, "Okay, okay, I'll do it, but I don't know why you're asking me to do this." I'm like, I've been kicked off Twitter. I've been, yeah, our finances have been cut in half. So I don't have a following. I don't have a face for this. I don't have finances. I'm a nobody. And he said, "That's exactly why I chose you, because if it was about any of those things, it would be about the person and not about the mission." And I said, all right, I'll do it." I said, "Just tell me what to do." And then there was dead silence, and I didn't hear anything. And so I reached out before I lost my confidence. I reached out to some friends of mine that were in the chat, and there was about 250 people in this chat. And I said, "All right, you guys, you're going to think this is crazy, but God has asked me to do this. Would any of you be interested in helping me?" And I had 7 precious people out of that group step forward and say, "Will help. Whatever it is. What is it? Will help you." And those people became my board of directors for BBHB. And it's amazing because those people, he could have given me like 7 accountants. I mean, every single person has a different, unique, and very gifted area of expertise. And we work amazingly well as a team. But moving forward from there, God was silent for a few months. In November of 21, he totally revealed how we were going to do it. We were going to be a cooperative. We were going to be based out of Minnesota, and I live in Texas, so that was quite odd. And we think of Minnesota as being quite a liberal state.
Right.
I did not understand that at all until later, and then it made perfect sense. He told us what our name was going to be, the Bible verse, John 15:13, that we were going to be modeled after, all of this. But Minnesota is important, as it turns out, because at some point, Minnesota was very much a freedom state, and Minnesota has some of the strongest natural health laws in the nation. Um, and they also have some of the most protective laws for cooperatives in the nation. So that's why we ended up being based out of Minnesota. But that required us to find a lawyer to help us get set up. And that was an ordeal because it's hard to find a freedom loving lawyer in Minnesota too. So
Yeah.
we went through 5 lawyers before we found one that would work with us, that we felt like we could really trust. So, but Blessed by His Blood came into being, and what we do, and as we have gone through this, I mean, we match blood donors and recipients throughout the United States for people who have chosen to abstain from the mRNA technology. And as we have learned how to do that, we've also learned more and more about the blood industry in general, and that kind of brings us to your first question. So I'm sorry about that rabbit trail, but I
No,
feel
it's helpful. It's helpful to have all the background.
so. The blood industry, we tend to think of it as an altruistic environment, and it is for the donors, right? I mean,
Right.
we give blood because it's the right thing to do, and it is life-saving. I mean, that is absolutely the truth. But the little known fact of blood donation, and you can look this up on commodity reports, is the United States supplies 70% of the world's blood products. I mean,
Why? Like, huh?
one,
What? Why?
right, right. Isn't
Why
that
is that? Yeah,
interesting?
it's
Right?
just shocking. You're thinking, don't all countries have the bloodmobile show up and at the church parking lot or at the university? I used to
Exactly.
run the blood drive at my university, my Christian college, and had I known what I was asking of my fellow classmates, maybe I wouldn't have been so
You
gung
know,
ho.
I have learned the same myself.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. The other thing is that of the blood that's collected, and I'll say this, it's not universal, because there are some really good blood donation centers that are are small that keep their blood in the community.
Mm-hmm.
But the larger ones, this is especially an issue. Only about 20% of blood that's collected actually stays in the community. The other 80%, like I said, about 70% of it goes overseas. And then the other goes to pharma and it goes for research. And this is where it gets very interesting. And it really wasn't until last year that I started putting the pieces together
Right.
on the pharma end of this, understanding what was actually being built off of the altruism of the donors throughout the United States. But there's something called the biologics in the pharmaceutical industry, and they came into being around 1998 to 99. Interestingly, that was around the time that I was working for a pharmacy. We specialized in rare diseases, oncology, infertility, and just unusual disorders. It was a very interesting job that I had for 12 years. We saw the entrance of the biologics at the time that I was working there. And again, this is another layer where I know the Lord put me there working there for a while, so I would start to see and understand the biologics then. But the biologic industry is that aspect of pharmacy is it is the fastest growing aspect of pharmacy right now, and it has been since 98, 99. And it's also I would say it's the most lucrative by a long shot. I mean, chemotherapy of course is extremely lucrative as well, but these biologics, they're basically taking a blood product and spinning it into gold. I mean, that's literally what's happening for them. They're the ones receiving the gold. But the average cost of a biologic runs anywhere from about $30,000 a year up to over $1 million a year. And of course, the more expensive ones, it's a harder, like they're looking for something specific in the human blood that they use for these biologics. Now, not all of the biologics are human blood based. Only about 10 to 20% of them are from human blood. The other are made from other living cells from other organisms, and which is problematic too, in my opinion. But for the point of this conversation, we're just talking about the human blood products. And that part is super interesting, and it helps put the pieces together and helps us understand why the blood industry is very much against directed donation. And they didn't used to be against directed donation. In fact, they used to be very much for directed donation. They were
And
in
that
the
and that means that I could say when I'm donating where exactly the blood would go to, directed. Is that what you mean by that?
Yes and no. When we say directed donation, what that means is a doctor has written an order for a directed donation, and so the recipient can choose who their donor is going to be.
Okay.
So it's more on the recipient side than on the donor side. So that can get a little confusing because when you do blood drives and like if there's been a large accident or something in a community, you're like, you go in and you're like, oh, I'm here donating on behalf of Mary Jane or whoever. Your blood is not actually going to Mary Jane. It's just they're using that as a vehicle, a kind of a marketing to
Mm-hmm.
bring blood in for the community. But anyway, these biologics that are made with human blood, this is also very interesting because it's not just I donate, they choose to take my blood and use it to make a biologic. Also, the blood is parted out like a car, kind of. So it's parted out, and then platelets are all put together, plasma is all put together, that kind of thing. Well, when somebody receives a human cell based biologic, they're not just receiving my blood product, they're receiving pieces of thousands of blood products from thousands of people. And you can kind of see the concern there
Mm-hmm.
because if let me back up a little bit more and just say blood is only tested for 12 things. And there's a lot more than 12 things that can actually ride in on blood. And they say,
Right.
oh, well, it's very safe. It's very, very safe. But they don't know that.
Right. Well, and let me ask you another question. So there's never a case where the pint that I donate in the bloodmobile stays intact and gets to a hospital and helps someone in surgery. You're saying it's always disseminated, like
No,
parts, like
no, it's often parted out, but
not
there are,
always.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and there are cases where people need whole blood. There are
Okay.
cases when people need plasma, and there are cases when people need platelets.
Okay.
It's depending on what the situation is. So it we don't know. We don't know what happens, but I will say this, the industry makes more money if the blood is parted out than if it's kind of like it is kind of like a car. If you part out a car, you're going to make more money by selling it part by part versus by
Mm-hmm.
selling the whole car,
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know?
also, yeah, and also just to press pause here because you're used to this now, but to my mind, I'm still surprised. Like I donate blood and someone makes money off my blood. I'm under the impression I'm doing this altruistic thing for the good of the community and I'm hoping that someone would do the same. Would I be in a situation where I would need blood? And here people are looking at the ways that they can chop up my blood and platelets here and plasma there to make money. So no one told me that. And no one told me here in Indiana that 70% of the blood that's going to be donated at this blood drive is going outside this
And
community
they
or
won't,
overseas.
yeah, and they
So
won't tell you that.
why is there such deception? It's just deceptive. What's happening? It's, it's portrayed as this, hey, we're coming to you to help you do the right thing for your fellow citizens. Not we're coming to you to
Where else
get
have you
your, yeah. Oh, well, that would be the entire pharmaceutical industry. Full stop. But yeah, it's it was astounding to me, and I'm just revisiting it now, but we had a similar conversation at your booth that this is happening. It's not any kind of conspiracy. It's easily fact checked, and yet no one knows it. And people give blood a lot. It's a very common thing for people to partake in and think that they're doing it under this set of circumstances, and it's exactly the opposite.
and people by nature, people are very giving,
Yeah.
and I do feel like there is um a bit of advantage that's being taken
Yes.
because of that, because they're literally taking the altruistic nature of people. And then we have blood banks where, and they hide behind 501c3 status. And again, I'm
Right.
not saying it's every single blood bank out there, but if you go in and look at the income, because you can do that on 501c3s, you go in and look at the um, what the salary is for the CEO. And if they're making $1.2 million a year, $1.3 million a year, that is not okay, in my opinion, for 501c3 that's supposed to be altruistic to
Hmm.
have that kind of salaries being dished out.
Well, it's just so deceptive. I mean, I remember as a child driving down this area of Cincinnati, which was more of an impoverished area. And there was some sort of, I think, plasma donation. And I saw people lining up, and my mom and dad were like, yeah, well, people can make some money. And if they need some money, they might go ahead and donate their plasma. I was like, okay, why? But that's at least it's clear what's happening. You
It
give
is.
me something, right? But the rest of this entire industry, and it is an industry, is shrouded in mystery and again deception.
That it is very much a mysterious industry because they don't really like people um to pry too much in what's going on.
Right.
There is a book that is written, interestingly, by a staunch Democrat called A Blood Market, and she wrote the book because she herself is dependent upon the plasma from donors. And as she has become dependent on it because of a condition that she has slowly come to realize how many thousands and thousands and thousands of people's cells she is accepting into her body. And she's like, I have no idea what, like, I'm dependent upon it, but I also have no idea what I'm receiving here. So she goes into this book. It's like 300 pages long, I think. I've read it. It's and it's so interesting because I was like, we align on this, and
Right.
this is what brings up. This is a completely nonpartisan
It
issue,
shouldn't be. And until
and
5 minutes ago, it was the left that was more skeptical of big pharma until literally 5 minutes ago. And now everything's flip flop. Sorry, carry on. I just had to
right.
throw that
No,
in.
that's true. Anyway, so she's like, she went in and tried to start investigating the blood banks. And not just that, but these plasma centers. And the plasma centers literally prey on lower income people.
That's why they
And
set up shop, right? Like I said, in those communities.
she states that, and she's like, this is a problem. And so you have people who literally are dependent, they're financially dependent on paying their bills. The only way that they can make their ends meet is by sitting in the chair and ridding themselves of plasma, right? So the plasma industry is very interesting, and they'll push you to be a producer, right? So there's the financial, but then there's like they'll call you like, "Hey, are you able to donate plasma?" Just like they do with the blood supply. And what people don't realize is you do get sick. I mean, like your body can't keep up with donating plasma that much. I mean, you will start to uh, get demineralized um, in a fairly significant capacity. So that's a problem. And I don't know that they've ever done any studies on like, well, what happens to people if they donate plasma, week in and week out, because you can donate weekly or, an indefinite period of time, what happens? And in the book, Blood Market, she does talk to people who they start to have some fairly visible health problems because of it. So that's concerning. Part
Yeah.
of the and in her conversation with people too, she says, some people are like, well, I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And then now I'm doing it to make ends meet.
Have you reached out to her by chance, just based on you being in the
Um,
field now?
I, that has been on my mind but it's not something that I've done yet, but I would like to have a conversation with her. And because I think like the meeting of the minds, this is something that we can agree on.
Right. I love that. Yes. And she might want to take advantage of, I don't know if you offer whatever kind of blood she needs for her condition, but like you were saying earlier, that she's got thousands and thousands of bits of DNA fragments from all these different people in her. Is that correct? I mean, I don't know the biology of it. Like, are you literally getting these bits, these cells of other people, obviously, because cells are red blood cells and so forth? But is there DNA that is possibly messing with her body?
Yeah, and depending on what exactly it sounds like she's just getting plasma.
Okay.
But yeah, there are things that are possibly being carried in on plasma
Okay.
for her. So it is interesting. There's another book because I've had to do so much research over the
Yeah.
last 4 years. That's just called Blood, and it's by a gentleman named Douglas Starr, and I suspect he might be left leaning too. His book talks about the outcome of the blood industry post HIV, like during that era and what happened. And the long and short of it is it's really fascinating because he gets down to the minutia on this and the Senate hearings that resulted afterwards, because there were so many people that were infected with HIV from blood transfusions and blood product transfusions. And what came out in the Senate hearings is the blood industry actually knew that there was a problem, and they worked very hard to hide it for, in some cases, upwards of almost 2 years. And as a result, there were people who were continually infected that could have been avoided, and a lot of these people did die as a result of it. And the problem, though, again, is when you receive a blood transfusion, unless it's something glaring like you all of a sudden have hepatitis, or you all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden have HIV and you don't have a lifestyle conducive to hepatitis or HIV. I mean, that's a, like you can be sure that it probably came from the blood, but there's all kinds of other things that can happen too. Because remember, I said there's only 12 things that are tested for.
Mm-hmm.
When a problem happens, just like with the COVID shot, it doesn't always affect everybody in the same way. So a blood transfusion that causes a problem for you might cause a different problem for me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we can also come together as a nonpartisan group, because honestly, collected donor blood is your safest bet. It's not just because you're um it's not just because you know the people. The other thing too is that the fresher blood is, the safer blood is. I mean, you have to remember, blood is a tissue. I mean, it's a liquid tissue, and tissue has a lifespan. And blood in a bag only lasts for about 42 days ish, but it starts degrading the moment it goes into the bag. And blood is like milk at Walmart. I mean, it has to be rotated. And so when somebody needs a bag of blood, they're going to, in the hospital setting or transfusion center setting, they're going to use the oldest product on the shelf because they have to move it, right? But the longer the blood has been in the bag, the greater the risk of a transfusion related injury. And that could be a blood clot. It could be an extended stay in the hospital as a result, not because of the blood clot, but because it often causes a longer stay in the hospital. So anyway, this is where the problem is. And you can also have multiple organ issue, lung issues, all kinds of things. And we've talked to people through the years where there's been a situation where they're like, is it possible that this could have happened after I had a blood transfusion? And, our response is, it's possible. It's certainly possible, but there's like been no studies on this. So,
Conveniently.
conveniently, conveniently. So, but the blood industry, like I said, is very much against what we're doing now, because I believe, for a couple of reasons. One is because I think there is a value, and they've seen this value in people who, because they ask the question when you donate blood, because I donate blood to people like in our BBHB membership. I've been a donor. They ask you if you've had the COVID shot. Well, if they ask you if you've had the COVID shot, but yet then they say they don't separate them out, why are they asking the
Right.
question?
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that there probably is an increased value of some sort. They're doing something with that blood. I
Right.
don't know what, in anonymous donor situations where you're just donating for the general public.
And they're doing, so you're saying this, because I haven't given blood in several years now. So you're saying that if I would go to a blood donation drive, they would be asking me that. That would be something I would fill out in the paperwork.
Yeah, if they follow the Red Cross protocol, which most blood centers do follow Red Cross, then that will be one of the questions that gets asked. I know, it is very interesting, isn't it? It's like, why do you ask the question if because I asked them that question. I was like, why are you asking this question if it doesn't matter? You know?
Well, the vaccine was so safe and effective that, I mean, wouldn't you prefer to have the vaccinated blood? I mean, maybe they're tossing ours because it doesn't have enough spike protein in it. I mean,
Well, yeah, I don't even want to speculate on what they might be doing with it. But here's the thing: if I'm donating to you, the bag of blood has a barcode that is assigned to you, and it is now belongs to you and your medical process. What that also means, though, is they can't, if because they're going to test my bag that I donated just like they would test anonymous donor blood. In that process, they'd be like, "God, she's got this unique feature to her blood. We could make a lot more money if we sold it to pharma or researcher overseas than we could for our contract pricing that we have with the hospitals and transfusion centers." Because going back to my stint in rare diseases, oncology, and infertility, I distinctly remember on the phone, and I had a conversation with a doctor last night, and he's like, they still do this with something like IVIG, very common. It's a very common product that's used nowadays. We would call on the phone. We're like, what's the price of IVIG this week? And it would be, it's $1,200 a gram. It's $2,200 a gram. It's like, it was like the stock market. It went up and down. Why is that? So it's supply and demand, availability, not availability. There are other products that I'm sure are exactly the same way, where it's like, it's $3,000 this week. It's, whatever. But I think too, in that book by Douglas Starr that's just called Blood, one of the things that was shocking, not shocking, in the Senate hearing when they were talking to the head of America's blood banks, and they were admitting their guilt in hiding what they knew. And they said, we didn't know what else to do, so we didn't tell the truth. We wish that we had, like, this is in the Senate hearings when this happened. We wish we had been honest at the time, but we were afraid.
And they're referring to what time frame, or just in
That was the HIV years.
during? Okay, got it,
Yeah,
got it.
during the HIV
Mhm.
years. The actual, let me see, it was actual quote is, when we were touting the risk as 1 in a million, because that's what they were saying. It was like, oh, the risk is so low. When we were touting the risk as 1 in a million, we hadn't a clue. It was a stupid thing to say, but we were afraid. We had this desire to reassure the public. We should have been honest and said, we really don't know what's going on. If it started a panic, well, so be it. We should have let it happen. That that is in the Senate hearing registry for the United States. And that quote came from James McPherson, who was the director at the time of what is now America's Blood Centers, and the head of Red Cross's regulatory affairs. And this is the other problem: is the blood banks themselves are the advisory committee for the blood aspect of the FDA, CDC. So you have the fox guarding the hen house.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking
Yeah.
this is the kind of thing where I know that a lot of, I mean, if you've been where we've been with the medical freedom movement, we've lost all trust in any kind of regulatory body, because they've all been captured, and across multiple domains, not just pharma and health and so forth. But I mean, just as I was thinking, like, this would be room for a government regulation process to be in place. And yet, to your point, it won't be, because whoever's the regulator is incentivized to keep things going in their direction, because, like, Fox and Henhouse, yeah.
Unless we're able to get Bobby Kennedy somehow, some way to bring in the right people, like he's trying to do with ASIP, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, I just pray that this happens. And I do believe that there's some hope. On September 18th and 19th of this year, so just, a couple months ago, there's a doctor, his name is Dr. El Dawari, and there's another doctor, Cooper Wasser. One is from Tufts and the other one is from Brown University. And Dr. El Dawari is a oncologist. And they were asked to speak at ASIP, which I'm sure you know this, but for your listeners, it's the advisory committee for immunization practices. And in their presentation, on one of their slides, it's a 16 slide presentation. On slide number 6, they say that the mRNA, we're not talking spike proteins, we're talking actual mRNA, is found in the blood at least 706 days post injection, which means that it's continuing to reproduce or replicate, right? And their final slide, their number one recommendation, and this recommendation is literally played a large part in why the CDC, thank God, removed the mRNA injection for COVID off of the quote unquote mandatory schedule, right? So that actually happened, but their number one request was blood and tissue monitoring. You can't have blood and tissue monitoring and not monitor the blood supply. You can't do that, and you can't do that without separating them out. I mean,
Yeah.
so the question is, when is that going to happen? Because it has got to happen. In the meantime, because it's not happening, we're working on legislation, like our mission expanded, our BBHB mission expanded from just matching, because blood banks are trying to shut this down. And so
what are they doing? What are the actions they're taking to try to?
The actions that they're taking are, the two biggest ones are, number one, they're flat out saying no. And this happened here in Texas. It is probably the largest blood donation center in North Texas. It's called Carter Blood Care. Interestingly, in January of 23, after God told me to go and preserve the blood, in January of 23, he said, I need for you to protect the blood. So obediently, I went to the Capitol in Texas, because that's where I live. I went there and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure this out. And I met a senator there who saw my vision and made it, and wrote a bill, basically. That bill did very, very well until the blood industry got involved and was able to do some things behind closed doors. And we were like literally half an inch from making it across the finish line. And they were able to do some things behind closed doors that stopped the bill, which in my opinion should not be legal, but it happens all the time,
Yes.
and Texas meets every other year. So we had to wait through 2024. We tried again in 2025, and they did again, our bill did very, very well. It would have passed had it had the opportunity to be heard on the floor in the House. And it got slow walked to the point that the session ended before it got heard. So this is one of the ways that they're doing it. But Carter, for this example, they just publicly said, we're no longer offering directed donations, even if a doctor writes the order. And this should make doctors mad. I mean, honestly, because now doctors can't, if a doctor sees directed donation as a way to practice best medicine for the patient, we have a corporate entity telling him he cannot practice medicine the way he sees fit. And that is, I mean, honestly, that is a violation of patient ethics, for one thing. But it's a corporation that's making this blanket decision, and it profoundly affects people. So that's one way that they're doing this.
Right.
Another very, very large blood bank that has found if they can slow walk the whole process, because blood, like testing it and getting it ready to go, takes less than 3 days. I mean, it is a process because you have to test it for these 12 things, and that takes a little bit of time for the test to happen. But when blood is tested, 3 days later, it can go into the recipient. So this large blood bank, known as American Red Cross, says, well, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to process blood. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We've seen it process as low as 18 hours in other locations. So, and barcodes, they argue that it's extremely hard to track directed donor blood. Anything with a barcode on it, which is what a bag of blood is anything with a barcode on it is easily tracked. I mean, that makes no sense. But we stumbled across a training video that was paid for by Pfizer for blood banks, that the training is literally teaching blood bank workers how to dissuade people from asking for directed donations, and how to train also doctors how to dissuade patients from asking for directed donation. And in that, they actually mention our Texas bill, they mention a Kentucky bill, and they say these bills almost passed. We can't let that happen.
Cutting into their profits.
That's right. That's right. And again, blood is a multi-billion dollar industry. It is an industry.
Which is so infuriating, because if it's going to be that, at least, like we said earlier, at least let me have a cut of it, since you're using literally my blood. It's something I created from my body, and I'm donating thinking I'm doing this very generous, kind, loving, Christ-like gesture. And then people are going like, thanks. They got the money.
And which is what I was like, BBHB, which is what we are. I mean, we're 100% philanthropic, mission minded. None of us get a salary. Everything we do, and we've put in thousands and thousands of hours on this, because we believe that when people give blood, they're doing it because, modeled after John 15:13, no man has greater love than to give his life for his friend. The stories that have come out of this are just like, will bring you to tears of like the graciousness and the goodness of people who will, like, I'll drive 4 hours to go give blood for this person that needs it, who has tried so hard to avoid the mRNA shot, and so that's what our community is. We look out for one another, and as we're supposed to, as Christians, as we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be our brother's keeper, and to take care of each other. I would say, if anybody that's listening is interested in being a BBHP member, we're not an expensive entity. It's $25 a year to be a member, and kids under 18 are free, as are disabled adult children who have to live at home. They're also free. We're doing this for the right reason, and we know who's on our side, and we know we're going to win, but we're we're working with 15 different states right now to get legislation passed, and also to bring awareness like we're doing today is like, cockroaches in the dark.
That's
Like
right.
we're bringing light.
Right. Liz, I want to ask about the process because I got your texts because you were sending out some texts for
Yeah.
anyone you connected with at the CHD conference. And I got scattered with Thanksgiving and hosting and blah, blah. And so my husband and I absolutely are going to join. We are very excited. So with $25 a year, I can understand like if I had a planned surgery that I would be able to say, hey, Liz or whoever is going to help me, this is what I need in case I should have a problem in the surgery or if the hospital needs it. And right now, even though they're trying to shut things down, that would still be something I could go to random hospital and say, hey, I'm having this surgery and I want this blood from this
Okay.
organization. Yes or no?
So here's what happens. Whenever you believe you might need blood, and we cannot help in emergency situations. If you're bleeding out, you're going to get whatever's on the ambulance. But if you need blood and you're a member, you reach out to us, we open a case, and then we walk you through the process, because first things first, your doctor has to write the order.
Okay.
And this is why it's so important to actually understand, how does your doctor, how does your doctor feel? How did your doctor feel about COVID? How did your doctor feel about alternative treatments? How does your doctor feel, or are they on the straight and narrow Western medicine only? Because even if they are, you still have the right. I mean, this is a personal choice. You have the medical autonomy, you have the religious freedom, and we need to be able to exercise that. So that's the first step, is getting your doctor to write the order for directed donor blood. And we advise our members, don't ever come in guns blazing saying, I want COVID-free blood, or I want unjabbed blood. That will create a hostile environment super fast. So you just come in and say, I have direct donor, I want directed donor blood. And if they press you for why, you just say, because it's fresher, and you'll get better outcomes that way. So moving on from there, then we work on, once you have the order, then we're like, okay, which hospital are you at? We have a list of friends, what we call our friends and foes. And our friend list is those hospitals that are served by blood centers that are friendly. Okay. Because there are blood centers that are not friendly, just like Carter Blood Care here in North Texas. So, and then from there, while that is going on, we already know your blood type, because that's part of becoming a member, is knowing your blood type. We're already working on matches. We're already reaching out to people and that are in your area, and getting all that lined up for you, so that as soon as we have like the go, which is the order,
Mm-hmm.
we can start sending them in to donate for you.
And so then when we join, we might get a call like, hey, someone's having surgery near you and they need your blood. And I'd go, yep, it's my turn to give. And knowing that someone in the organization would give for me should I need it. Is that how that works?
Yep. That's
Okay.
that's how it works. And I'll say this, as it has turned out, we weren't expecting this, but it's just as it's happened, about 75% of the people that we serve have turned out to be children and birth mothers. And then the other 25% has been the open heart surgeries, the severely anemic, the cancer patient, or other blood dyscrasia, something like that going on. And it's been, I mean, honestly, the kids are the ones who need it the most. But the way it's all worked, I mean, we've never had to turn anybody away for not being able to have a donor in what we do. We have been unable to help people because they've called us in the hospital saying, they're asking me to sign this form, and I'm sitting here just realizing what that means. And can you help me? And unless we can talk them through, like possibly a Jehovah's Witness protocol or something like that, then we might be able to help them still. But if it's an urgent need like that, you've waited too long. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, like the anemic situations and things where you're headed in that direction, if we'd had an extra few days, we probably could have helped you.
Just another example of having to, again, why we're having this conversation, because no one would even think. I mean, I remember back, gosh, it would have been 2021 when they rolled out the jab, and some friends of mine who also chose to abstain, she looked at me and she's like, what are we going to do about blood? I remember being terrified in 2020, 2021 that I would get hit by a car or something and have to go to the hospital. And for this issue, I would not have a choice of what kind of blood was put in me. You said obviously an accident that still could happen. But another issue, I was afraid with the pressure campaign and all the mandating, I was afraid they just put the jab right in my IV bag. Just like she doesn't want to be vaccinated.
And
Yeah.
that brings up another point, because there are forms that you should have signed on hand that are basically I do not consent forms, so that if that were to happen, I mean, the hospital would have a major lawsuit, and you need to have those forms signed, and you hand them over to the hospital, and saying I do not consent to having anything that I have not agreed to put into my body. And you have to be very careful about that, because they word things very sneakily and in the fine print when you're signing yourself into the hospital.
There was some whistleblower nurses that I saw during that era too. Not that it's died down from like in our face to the degree it was during the absolute tyranny under Biden, but it's still there. Like you said, we just go to the hospital for even a routine outpatient something, and we're just going to be sign, sign, sign. We're not reading that. Who
I
knows what we're
know.
actually. So that gives me comfort to know that I would be armed with my own stack of paperwork that I would hope then, and I'd have to have a good lawyer, I'm sure, but hope to be able to say, no, 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 this overrides, even if I sign something here that because you said put 50 pages of paperwork in front of me that I obviously wouldn't have time to sign. I mean, to read fully. It's just so, again, it's just so deceptive. And that's why, again, it's so important I'm a layperson. I don't know these things. You were in the field and now certainly very well versed in all of this. Are you finding that there are people who regret taking the vaccine who now want, if they want to join because they would like to clear up their blood should they have the opportunity to?
Yes, we've talked to a few of those people, and we made the decision early on, because we didn't know what we were going to be dealing with,
Right.
that for Blessed by His Blood, it's only people who have chosen not to get the COVID shot. There is it's called Safe Blood. And Safe Blood will take both unvaccinated and vaccinated. But I will say this, if you're a vaccinated person and you go through Safe Blood, it will be expensive, because they will charge quite a bit for that. What I would suggest doing if you're a vaccinated individual is find your unvaccinated friends, and you can do a little bit of what we're doing here. If you know you're going to need blood, is you identify your unvaccinated friends and ask them if they would consider donating on your behalf. And we've walked people through that before, how they should go about doing that, and the whole process too. And we, because we feel sorry. I mean, we have great empathy for these people
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
They didn't
Well,
know.
some did to save their job and put food on the table. Some did so they could go to university. I know we need to wrap up here, Liz. I know you have some other commitments. I'm just one final question, I think, for those of us in the community. I would be remiss if I wouldn't ask. What do you opinion and based on all that you know about this shedding notion? So and I know that happens, I think, through bodily fluids. There was the idea that if a husband was vaccinated, his wife through intercourse, they could have some shedding. So she's now unvaccinated, but is her blood as pure? Is it pure blood in the way that she would hope it would be if she were going to join the organization?
I just saw a paper yesterday, and that is established now,
Okay.
that the shedding, I mean, and it's been established in various ways for quite some time. But early on, our concern was about this too. And so one of the things that we ask when somebody is applying for membership with BBHB is we ask if somebody's had intimate relations with
Mm-hmm.
somebody who did
Yep.
get the shot. That does not keep them from becoming a BBHB member. But what we
Mm-hmm.
will do is we will relegate them to recipient only status,
Wow.
because we're not going to penalize them for, because they didn't get the shot. I mean, they did the right thing. They didn't get the shot. We're not going to penalize them by keeping them from becoming a member. We're just going to leave them as a recipient, because we don't
Yeah,
know what we don't know. And
we don't.
that's the safest route for our members is, we're just going to continue to supply blood that we feel is as clean as possible. And that's another question. We do ask questions about biologics too. on our membership. It's like, are you on any injectables? That's a question you'll get.
Sure.
And it's like, if you are, which ones are you on? And then we do a little bit of checking. If we're not sure, we do some deep diving, and it's like, okay, is this safe? Is it not? What cell source is this coming from? And if we identify it as a human cell source, then we list them as recipient only, because they didn't know.
God did prepare you just for this, because I don't even know what a biologic is. Like, I wouldn't even, that would never cross my path. And here you worked in that particular niche portion of the field for what, 12 years? And so you were steeped in that to understand, oh, wait, this is something else we need to ask. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Liz, I want to thank you so much for your time. Is there any parting words for the community? As of course, the website, so they can sign up if they would like to. I mean, $25 a year seems like a steal to have, at least, obviously emergencies, that's a different story, but at least for any kind of planned procedures to be able to
Right.
access the pure
Right.
blood.
Well, it's www.blessedbyhisblood.com. And I will say this, if somebody's interested in volunteering in addition to being a member, we would love to have you. I mean, that's how we're powered, is through volunteerism. And together we get a lot done.
And what would the volunteering look like?
It could be it could be anything. It could be help with legislation. It could be help with paperwork. It could be just every member is actually, the easiest way to volunteer is when you become a member, you actually get a little card with a QR code on it that you can also find on your member portal. And that QR code and that link, we all know who our people are after the last 5 years, right? We all know who they are. Once you learn about BBHB, spread the word and give your QR code, your membership link, to your friends. This is how we grow our community. That's the best way to volunteer. And if somebody else is aware of a group that might be interested in visiting, I'm happy to do a Zoom call or an in-person if it's close enough to me. I'm happy to do that, as are my other board members. We'll be happy to. And we're all over the United States. Our board members are.
It's wonderful. Well, I'm very thankful to God that he spoke to you very clearly, even in the midst of you're doing the Moses thing, like, go with Aaron. He's a better speaker, right? And God's like, I don't care what you're trying to tell me, how you're not equipped for this job. You're equipped.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's there's definitely a piece of Moses in the story.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, Liz, do you mind just giving us a quick prayer to bless this time and to bless all the listeners?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Lord, we just thank you today for Karin and for Love and Life. And just, I ask a blessing just for the message that we shared today, that it be shared far and wide with Karin's audience. We ask that, as a country, we're able to come together and help one another out in things like this. This is a nonpartisan issue, and we know you know that, and we know as believers, your blood covers us. So in some small way, we're stepping forward and covering others with our blood. We ask just grace and protection and mercy as we continue forward to do your will in each of our own ways. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.